edition of Cheers to Careers. I'm Steve Ridinghouse, the Career Outreach Coordinator at the School of Journalism and Mass Communications at KU. Hello and welcome to another episode of Cheers to Careers. I'm Steve Ridinghouse, the Career and Outreach Coordinator at the KU School of Journalism and Mass Communications. It's our 34th episode, and today we are joined by Stephen Wade, City Manager of Topeka. Stephen, I will admit you are our first city manager in studio. How did this happen?
Well, I guess good thing we have a good connection, because otherwise, no, it's it's great being back on campus and this incredible facility that I grew up in.
I know you have a long storied career in journalism. I know photographer, editor, regional manager. Was it about the last 3 or 4 years you kind of shifted towards city government?
Shifted over to city government in the middle of 2020. So that August, moved in and then took the reins as city manager this past September.
Now, what kind of sparked that interest in city government?
You know, the great part about being on the journalism side is we're so integrated with city government back and forth. And really, I got into journalism because of love for communities. You know, the goal was, and I think for a lot of us, the goal is to make communities better. Right. And really, on the government side, it's the same thing. And so really, it was just an opportunity for me to do the same thing, but do it in a way that I thought could have a very meaningful impact.
And before you became city manager, you were kind of in charge of finances, right, for the city?
Yep, started off in the budget office, which is great because you learn pretty much every department inside the city and what it does. Moved into the role of finance director, which is basically the CFO. And then did that for a year and slid on up. And
I know a lot of times they talk about journalism grads don't have to know about math. So when did you start picking up your expertise in numbers? I know as a publisher, that was probably a big part of your
It was a huge
routine,
part of it, a huge part of it. And so math for me has just always been one of those things that I could do. And picked up my MBA while I was serving as publisher, because the business side is so much of that job, and so I really wanted to learn it. And so I picked up an MBA in accounting, and that has served me well.
And didn't you also pick up another master's in public administration?
I did from here at KU. Just walked the hill in May.
So lifelong learning, that sounds like that's
absolutely.
A big part of your life.
It is.
Has that always been something you've kind of aspired to be?
You know, I think when you're in journalism, you are doing lifelong learning. And moving over onto the business side, you lose a little bit of that, so you kind of have to push yourself. And now that I'm over on the government side, there's a lot to learn.
And how do you think kind of your newspaper background, working in that private sector, has kind of helped transition in this public role?
Boy, I tell you, it's been really good in so much as folks that have grown up in government and that's all they've ever known have trouble seeing something different. Right. Whereas being on the publishing side of the business, as you know, it changes every day. Either you're covering something different, you're producing a different product every day, but you have to continually push yourself. So carrying that over into government has been really good because you look at things different. Your pace is much different than I think what is stereotypical for government, and so it's been a good asset for me.
And I think during your time as like a publisher, I mean, weren't you really big on like community outreach?
Yes.
I mean, yes. I would think that just helped you in this role quite a bit.
Very much so. Yeah, community's a big part of this.
And since you've been in this role since September, have you had time to kind of meet some of your goals? Are you still establishing those goals for the coming year? Or?
Yeah, it's like drinking out of 2 fire hoses at once. Lot going on, but I've also found that one of my primary goals, Steve, was developing talent and to build a good team. I think that's critical for any leadership position. So we're building a really good team right now at the City of Topeka. Very excited about that. But as far as priorities, really you're controlled by the governing body and whatever those priorities are specific for them. And those have changed a little bit. So as we've gotten into a couple cold snaps this year, the challenge of the unsheltered is really on the rise. And so, you know, what probably was number 4, 5, 6 on the priority list when I started is now rapidly become number 1.
And I know Topeka is your hometown,
yep.
So I think being in this role in your hometown has to mean a lot to you.
It does. You know, I get to go have dinner with my parents every Sunday evening, and so that's a joy. But it's, Topeka is very special to me.
And did you ever have that aha moment when you thought, hey, I think I'm ready for a position like this? Or did it just kind of naturally progress over time?
I think it's kind of naturally progressed over time. The careers, my first publishing job was down in Pittsburgh, Kansas. And you learn a lot there, and did that for almost 10 years, and gradually took on more responsibilities going into a regional role, and really having properties across the state of Kansas. So it's just kind of been a natural progression.
And when you were at KU here in the late 1980s, what were some of your memories? I'm sure you were very involved with the Daily Kansan.
Yep. So my favorite memory would have been the national championship.
88.
Being there on the editing desk with Todd Cohen. Todd was editor that semester, and we designed the page that Champs that is now all over the place, and so that was fun.
So who takes credit for that design? You or Todd? Or
I think we share it.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I had one of those in my office, so yeah, that is well known. And you started your career in photography, right?
Yes.
So when you did graduate, what was your career aspiration? Were you always hoping to be a photographer, or did you see yourself just evolving over time with different roles?
I think my career goal coming out was to be a director of photography. I mean, that's where I wanted to go. And Rich Clarkson, and we've got a gallery here named after Rich, really gave me a start. And I moved straight into a picture editing role coming out of school. Was able to shoot some on the side, but really got my start into supervision right out of school.
And how soon in your career did you kind of transition more to like the management? That happened pretty early.
Yeah, I was in Los Angeles for about 3 years, and then came to Topeka in '93, and really started that transition from film to digital, and then just gradually kept taking on more responsibilities, and ended up moving over into production because at that time the Macs were the thing, and Topeka was transitioning off a mini mainframe. And the guys that were running that didn't want any part of the PC, so you kind of got to learn technology and moved my way up.
And what do you think have been some of those skills? I know a big part of this podcast is some of those transferable skills. What kind of skills have kind of helped you throughout your career?
Boy, journalism's been big on it, in so much as you learn to ask questions, you do critical thinking, certainly the ability to write. I use those things every day.
And I know we're, about 3-4 months away from spring commencement.
Yep.
If you had any advice to share with like journalism graduates, what kind of messaging would you have for them as they enter the workforce?
It's a great opportunity. It's a fun profession. What I would encourage any employee, especially on the journalism side, is ask the questions about ethics. Get a real good feeling for who your boss is, if you're in broadcast, what the station stands for, if you're in print, what the newspaper stands for, but really learn what they stand for, learn those values, and make sure it aligns with where you are at.
And you've kind of got a good sense of, you've been on both sides, from the media, government. I know when you see kind of national coverage, there always seems to be a little tension.
Yeah.
How do you gauge that in terms of especially like local government? Do you feel like you got a pretty good handle on that? I mean, do you work with media as a partnership? How do you approach that?
We try to be partners. So yesterday, we have an initiative that's being discussed at our next council meeting, and the great part about the local media is they're going to show interest in that. And so really you're able to tell your story, answer questions, so that the constituents, our taxpayers, know what's going on.
Well, Steve, I appreciate you taking the time.
No, thanks, Steve.
That trip
Appreciate it
from
very much.
Topeka and
Good to see you.
Lawrence, and cheers to your careers.
Cheers to you.
Been fascinating to watch.